All the best games are easy to learn and difficult to master. More on that quote later, but hello. Today we're going to be covering why it is yourself and others love to watch Dead by Daylight gameplay. We're going to take a look into virtual communities, the concept of edutainment, competitiveness, and finally discuss the impact of MMR. But first, let's start with Let's Plays. The Let's Play archive describes a Let's Play as to show a video game being played while the player talks about what they're doing in commentary with video, screenshots, or both. Essentially, it's speaking over gameplay of some sort, be it pre-recorded or live. YouTube boasts around 1.86 billion active users, and Twitch 2.84 million average concurrent viewers last year. Some of the biggest channels on YouTube are focused around gameplay and Let's Play style videos. Twitch also offers a large number of dedicated channels specific to live streaming video games, and many of these are the largest on the platform. Today we're going to focus on Dead by Daylight. DBD has a sturdy player base and strong viewership on the aforementioned sites, among others. So what is it about the game which facilitates such a dedicated audience? First we have to look at you, the audience. Why is it you're watching this video, Twitch streams, or any other digital content regarding Dead by Daylight? Perhaps it's best to start by looking at what your wants are. Let's use Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs. What this model indicates is what we, as people, require to live, starting with basic needs like food, water and safety, giving us a baseline of what's required to stay alive. Where Let's Plays and Dead by Daylight come into the mix is under psychological needs, specifically a feeling of belongingness. Whether it be in a YouTube audience or a live stream's broadcast, you become part of an online community of people sharing an experience. You share a common interest with the games that are being played, the personality playing them, and the sense of humour and discussion among the participants. Finally, there is self-fulfillment needs, which is basically a wanting to achieve and be the best we can be. But for this topic, our focus is on the feeling of belonging. By watching Dead by Daylight, you begin to become part of a virtual community. And it is with this virtual community that social needs are met in some form. This is supported by the increase of viewership since March 2020, when the lockdown was introduced around the world. People sought a social need. This concept of virtual communities can apply to any form of digital content though, so watching Fortnite or your favourite TikTok creator and being part of that community can provide the exact same feeling. But different games attract different audiences, so let's look more into DBD. Dead by Daylight is of the horror genre, which in itself attracts a very specific audience. People with an interest in the uncanny, marvellous and fantastic. There is a large fan base for horror gameplay as well, with horror Let's Plays arguably being a driving factor in the genre, since the days of Slender. With the amount of intellectual properties within the game from various horror franchises, it's become a place for horror fans to go. On top of this, it's worth noting the muted colour palette. The human eye continues to develop as we age, and it is well established that younger people tend to prefer brighter colours. So in theory, a more mature audience will prefer muted tones, which also matches the horror aesthetic of the game. Dead by Daylight also has an age rating of 18+, and this further supports the game being directed towards a slightly older audience. So even with these very simple traits being horror, colour and age, you can immediately gauge information about the community you're engaging with. But it's not all about finding a community for some. What about its entertainment value, or ability to learn and get better at the game? Dead by Daylight has a variety of killers and perks, which can be used in a magnitude of ways. On top of this, there is a number of different maps, gameplay techniques, and with continuous updates there is always something to learn about the game. Maybe even about its game design. This leads us to the concept of edutainment. Edutainment is the combination of entertainment and education. There are many definitions of edutainment, but my personal favourite is a form of entertainment designed to educate, as well as amuse, and typically seeks to instruct or socialise its audience by embedding lessons in some familiar form of entertainment. In a nutshell, edutainment is the goal of these videos.
Are you not entertained?
It's an attempt to be fun and informed. It is estimated there are around 3.24 billion gamers in the world, and some of these people will wish to learn more about the games they play. Let's Play style content gives a canvas to entertain, teach, and learn whilst providing an environment to build virtual communities providing social needs for everyone. But again, this applies to many games. Why do so many people choose Dead by Daylight? As of May 2022, Dead by Daylight boasts 26 unique killers, with unique abilities, 93 specific perks for those killers, 104 survivor perks, and 16 different map locations with 32 variations. That's a whole lot of information to master, but then you can add in the techniques and tactics you can employ to mind game and outwit your opponents that you're left with an enormous amount of learning. This is where creators can be more serious and educational with their gameplay for their respective audiences. So we can establish that the game provides a place to form virtual communities with similar interests, and provide ample information for an audience to be encouraged to want to learn. But is there more to this entertainment factor? I'd like to return to the initial quote at the start of the video, Bushnell's Law. All the best games are easy to learn and difficult to master. This applies to both the educational element and also to a competitive one. To fully support the point I want to make, we're going to take a weird turn to the world of real-time strategy games. In a game design conference talk in 2016, Dustin Browder reflected on the design behind StarCraft 2. When released, it had less unit options and factions than competitors of the same time, but stood out among them. StarCraft 2 was developed purposefully to be an esports style game. To achieve this, it had to appeal to an audience by minimalising. By reducing the number of unit types in the game, there was less room for confusion among viewers. They could quickly learn and tell what various troop types did. Also, by reducing the amount of unit choice meant professionals, the players, weren't guessing and were forced to play in a much more skillful, counteracting manner. For example, it'd be like if you were playing Pokemon. If your opponent used a fire type, you would likely want to respond with a water type. He also describes key features to develop a watchable game, these being clear, simple, skill, and uncertainty. So let's discuss these key features within the confines of Dead by Daylight. Clear. Players and audiences alike are able to fully understand the motivation for each side in DBD very quickly, be it hook survivors and prevent escape as the killer, or completing 5 of the 7 generators and escape as a survivor. There are more elements, but the general rule set is very clear. Simple. Last week we discussed what it is that makes Dead by Daylight so good. I suggested it was the looping mechanic, partially because of its simplicity to understand. Looping is the most interactive element of the gameplay, yet is easy to follow along as it's essentially the concept of cat and mouse with lockers, pallets, and vaults. For more detail you can refer to last week's video. Skill. DBD may have a very simple to understand foundation, but mastering specific loops, mind gaming the killers, mastering the use of specific powers and perks all gives way to there being better players. In late 2021, the game introduced skill-based matchmaking and MMR, meaning players of similar skill sets should be matched together, which should in theory lead to more competitive matchups. And finally, uncertainty. Another word which you'll find more details of from last week's video, but I will summarise it here a bit. So what this means is unpredictable elements to the matchup, and audience and players do not know what is going to happen. Random factors such as available pallets, loops, vaults, perks, and abilities can all change the outcome of any given match. Every single game of Dead by Daylight has the opportunity to stand up as its own unique experience, and with this provide moments for an audience and players to share. So to summarise, Dead by Daylight's design facilitates easy watching, partially because of the clear objectives and simple mechanics which make for an easy to follow along game. There is enough of a skill cap for an audience to have exhilarating moments and competitive back and forths. And finally, unpredictable and uncertain twists and turns where unique moments that the player and viewers can bask in together. So there is a social side, entertaining side, and an educational side to content for DBD. But can they coincide? Skill-based matchmaking and your matchmaking ratings are separate from your DBD grades. The grade system refers only to your reward tier on reset day, and how many blood points you will be rewarded. What dictates what other players you are matched with is a hidden number, your MMR. Your survivor MMR improves via survival in a match, and drops upon death. Killer is based upon the number of kills, each kill increasing your MMR, whereas each escape damages it. Essentially it is 4 1v1s. So a 2k basically means no change in your MMR whatsoever. Each killer has a unique MMR value, so in theory, killer and survivor should have similar skill levels when playing together. The reality has been a little different from this. Matchmaking is still somewhat dependent on time of day, and generally there still seems to be some gaps in skill level with the matches, especially solo queue survivor. So the question I pose is, does this MMR benefit its entertainment value? Now, MMR in theory should create more competitive matchups, which should lead to more thrilling gameplay for the audience. It avoids one side dominating the other, which isn't interesting for anyone. This allows for higher skilled games where the emphasis on strong gameplay and thus edutainment can be produced. On the other hand, this more competitive environment leaves less downtime for social elements, such as discussion and explanation, as the game requires more focus. This is a greater issue for live streams than it is for pre-recorded. Casual players don't necessarily want competitive gameplay each match, and this affects both killers and survivor players. It can also be argued to damage that uncertainty factor that I mentioned earlier. As a game becomes more competitive, dominant playstyles emerge. For example, it's become increasingly rare to see an exhaustion perk other than dead hard. But are these competitive issues the product of the player base? High MMR is only possible if you play competitively. Essentially, your own playstyle dictates how sweaty your matches are going to be. Mechanically, the game hasn't changed, but perhaps the mindset of the players has. Undoubtedly, the game has brought people together and given way to many forms of edutainment-based content. But perhaps it's time for both behaviour and the players to address the impact of skill-based matchmaking, and consider the desired playstyles that will create the most enjoyable environment for everyone to play the game. I'm looking at you, Insidious Bubba. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and consider following if you'd like to see more content like this. Thanks everyone, have a great day.